Shalom, everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping right into a deep dive of what is, honestly, one of the most magnificent and awe-inspiring passages in all of Scripture. We're talking about the absolute, unquestionable sovereignty of Yahweh over all creation, specifically as it's laid out for us in Psalm 29. A lot of folks call this the Song of the Seven Thunders, and let me tell you, it is such a profound anchor for us as Torah-observant believers. The text literally takes us on this sweeping cinematic journey. We start way up in the heights of the heavenly court, then we plunge right down into the violent, swirling center of an earthly storm, and finally we're brought back up to the eternal throne where the Most High rules in perfect peace. As we're going to see, the wildest forces of nature are really just the physical reverberations of his voice. So let's just dive right into this incredible text. Here is our quick roadmap for today's journey. We'll kick things off with Section 1, the heavenly call. Then we'll track the gathering storm in Section 2, the voice of thunder. After that, we'll hit Section 3, demythologizing the storm, followed by Section 4, king over the flood. And finally, we're going to wrap the whole thing up by seeing how this beautifully culminates in Section 5, fulfillment in Yeshua. All right, let's get right into Section 1, the heavenly call, which covers the first two verses of Psalm 29. Now, what's really fascinating here is how King David starts off. He doesn't open this majestic hymn down here on earth. He's actually looking up, directly addressing the B'nai Elim, the heavenly hosts themselves. He commands, quote, "Give unto Yahweh, O you mighty ones. Give unto Yahweh glory and strength. Give unto Yahweh the glory due to his name. Worship Yahweh in the beauty of holiness," end quote. David is explicitly telling the angelic council to ascribe total glory, that's kavod, and absolute strength exclusively to Yahweh. You know what's super interesting about this is that phrase, the beauty of holiness. In Hebrew, that's hadrat kodesh. And listen, this is definitely not just about aesthetics or looking nice. It's actually all about having the proper sanctuary posture. Approaching Yahweh requires some serious set-apart reverence, deep spiritual purity, and proper sanctuary order. True worship? It means returning to Elohim the exact honor that matches his revealed character and his covenant title. So David sets this amazing baseline for us. Before we can even begin to look at Yahweh's sheer power down on earth, we absolutely have to establish his supreme, unquestioned authority up in the heavens. So with that said, we move right into Section 2, the voice of thunder, diving into verses 3 through 9. Suddenly, we pan down from that perfectly tranquil, heavenly court right down to the earth where this massive, churning tempest is gathering out over the Mediterranean Sea. Just listen to the raw, untamed power in these words. The scripture says, quote, "The voice of Yahweh is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. Yahweh is over many waters. The voice of Yahweh is powerful. The voice of Yahweh is full of majesty." End quote. You can almost hear the tempest starting to roar, and David wants us to know exactly, without a doubt, who is orchestrating the whole thing. And this brings us to an absolutely crucial concept. Kol Yahweh, the voice of Yahweh. When you see the terrifying forces of nature in a violent storm, it's not just random, meaningless chaos. No way. For us, the Torah-observant believers, nature is quite literally the physical reverberation of Kol Yahweh. It is the explicit word and the booming power of the Most High that completely commands the elements. This brilliantly maps out exactly how that voice moves. We can track 7 distinct declarations of Kol Yahweh, which a lot of people call the 7 thunders of Yahweh. It reads like poetry, tracking this huge tempest moving violently southward across the Promised Land. Number 1, it starts over the waters, just thundering across the Mediterranean. Number 2, it proves to be powerful, putting divine omnipotence on full display. Number 3, it's majestic, showing off pure royal splendor. As the storm moves inland to number 4, we see it breaking cedars, literally shattering the pride of Lebanon's massive giant trees. Then number 5, dividing flames. Picture lightning flashes being violently cleaved by his word. It just keeps ripping south to number 6, shaking the wilderness, making the very desert of Kadesh tremble. And finally, number 7, stripping forests, laying the entire creation completely bare. While in total stark contrast, everyone standing in his temple is just crying out glory. Okay, let's transition over to Section 3, demythologizing the storm. We really need to pause the action for just a second here, because David is doing something super intentional. He's using this intense, violent imagery with a very specific polemical purpose. See, in Canaanite mythology, the surrounding nations actually deified the storm. They worshipped Baal as this rider on the clouds who supposedly controlled the lightning and the thunder. But David, he's totally stripping away Baal's pretenses. In verse 6, the scripture proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is Yahweh whose explicit voice alone makes Mount Hermon, which the text calls Syrian, literally skip like a young wild ox. This explanation completely demythologizes the storm. It proves that the forces of nature answer solely to the Creator himself, and definitely not to some fabricated pagan idol. And that brings us to a beautiful shift in section 4, King over the Flood, covering verses 10 and 11. As all that violent earthly storming finally subsides, we shift into this incredibly tranquil reality. Let's just read these comforting words together. Quote, Yahweh sat enthroned at the flood, and Yahweh sits as king forever. Yahweh will give strength to his people. Yahweh will bless his people with peace. End quote. I mean, think about that. While all of creation is trembling and the storm is just raging out of control, Yahweh sits serenely in complete, absolute dominion. Now, there's a crucial little detail here hidden in the original Hebrew. David uses the word mabul for the flood. This is a highly specific, very deliberate linguistic connection, because in all of Scripture, mabul is used elsewhere exclusively to describe Noah's flood back in Genesis chapters 6 through 11. What David is doing is demonstrating that Yahweh sits serenely enthroned above even the ultimate, most devastating historical chaos this world has ever seen. So out of that supreme, unmatched authority comes this beautiful, dual promise from the enthroned king. First, we get dynamic strength, or oz in Hebrew. Yahweh literally gives us the power to endure every single tempest. And second, we get unshakable peace, or shalom. He permanently seals his covenant people with wholeness and security. It is just an astonishing paradox, isn't it? The exact same infinite, terrifying power of Elohim that just shattered mountains and stripped entire forests bare is carefully, lovingly channeled to grant oz and shalom directly to his people. Finally, let's wrap things up in section 5, fulfillment in Yashua. For our Torah-observant community, this ancient psalm isn't just history. It's a prophetic shadow that finds vivid, living fulfillment in the Messiah. Remember when the disciples were absolutely terrified out on the Sea of Galilee, facing down a deadly storm? Well, Yeshua stood up, looked right at the raging tempest, and declared, open quote, peace, be still, close quote. That's straight out of Mark chapter 4, verse 39. Now this draws a direct, undeniable, exegetical line for us. Yahshua's command to that storm on the water demonstrated the exact same Kol Yahweh, the voice of Yahweh, that Psalm 29 explicitly tells us rules over the great waters. The wind and the waves? They obeyed him instantly, because he wields the true authority of the Creator over the elements. And hey, remember that dual promise of strength and peace we just talked about? Yahshua fulfills that perfectly too. Over in John chapter 14, verse 27, he tells his disciples, open quote, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives do I give to you, close quote. He is intentionally anchoring his promise directly to that incredible gift of shalom given by the enthroned king back in Psalm 29. Yashua sits enthroned right there at the right hand of power. In Messiah, the true glory, the kavod of the Father is fully revealed to us. She acts as the living temple where proper worship is rendered, and it prompts every single redeemed heart to cry out, glory, just like the heavenly host does in the sanctuary. She is the living, breathing embodiment of Yahweh's supreme authority and perfect peace. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to chew on. We've just traced the unmatched power of Kol Yahweh from the heights of the heavenly court through a violently destructive earthly tempest, all the way to the serene throne where Elohim rules over the flood. We know for a fact that we don't ever need to fear the roaring forces of this world because Yahweh reigns supreme over every environmental, political, and personal storm you could possibly imagine. But the real question is this. How can you rest in the unshakable shalom of Yahshua during the roaring storms of your own life? Take some time to really reflect on the absolute authority of the enthroned king today, and remember to always enter his presence with that set-apart reverence, Hadrat Kodesh, attributing all the victory and all the glory back to his name. Shalom, and thanks for joining us.